military people were working together on an international basis to deal with, and not all the threats were alien, but, alien threats or on-Earth threats that weren't alien-related, but, there was an international security agency that dealt with that, and my father-in-law was in charge of it from, I think 1966 on. Mm-hmm. Till he, later in the 90s, and then he died. Okay.
All right. For those of you just tuning in, we are talking with Joanne Richards of the Earth Defense Headquarters. And speaking of that, we have this question for you. Joanne, on your homepage, edhca.org, you mentioned otherwise forgotten information. What information are you talking about?
A lot of the stuff I bring out is in the realms of alternative history. So while the textbooks may talk about, a certain, this is how it happened, some of the stuff I'm trying to bring out is I don't want to say supplemental or the real history. This is what you're taught, and here, think about this. Because a lot of the stuff that my husband writes, for example, is full of, history and science. And, he doesn't just throw out this information and expect you to accept it blindly. Because he will, completely, I've learned a lot about physics just reading his stuff, but it's all complete with background information, and then here's the adventure part of it going on at the moment. So it's stuff like that. Background stuff that textbooks and media are not talking about, because we know the media is controlled by whoever. Mm-hmm.
And then we have this question here for you. Joanne, have you seen any TV show that contains this type of leaked information, say, in a cartoon or movie format? And I guess we were just talking about that on the Armageddon. Maybe it was kind of...
Right. And then I watched Deep Impact not too long ago, and it clearly has whatever they were flying out into space to take care of the incoming threat. The weapon on there that was going to deal with it was called an Orion, and it was dealing with nuclear stuff. Oh, there you go. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, the TV show, was it called Invasion?
Yeah.
One was called, it was just a year or so ago, and it was right around Katrina, and it was about these creatures that came, if you accidentally got yourself in the water, these creatures would take you over, and you'd still be human, but, you had this problem. And then there was another one about an undersea creature called Surface, and those are pretty good. And now you've got Cloverfield that's out about this monster, and even, what is it? Well, I'm drawing a blank. But, even little stories there's something called the Spiderwick Chronicles, which is more like a fantasy type thing. But there are, and I wouldn't call them monsters, but there are, little other beings on the Earth that aren't necessarily E.T. aliens, space creature or underwater creatures, but that are here and they're very real and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't, we'll probably get to this, but he was, Lieutenant Colonel was talking about underwater stuff. Now I'm working on a story about contact with oceanic beings. There are several species that aren't necessarily reptilian under the oceans. And, just to put it out there, they're very upset with how we've polluted the oceans. So, you see things big earthquakes off the coast of Oregon.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess if we're dumping trash right on top of their underwater dome, I would think
they're not happy with us.
Yeah. So here, let's go to this question. And by the way, everybody, in the live chat, we have live updates at the top. I see the Earth Defense Headquarters website there, and Army fought UFOs information there, and the being on Mars pic that we talked about earlier. Fascinating. The live Edge chat. Here's a question for you, Joanne. Have you seen any of these aliens?
No, I have not.
Okay.
But I've done a lot of research for my husband over the last 10 years, and I've seen evidence of his military experience to prove to me that he was doing top secret stuff. So, I believe what he's telling me.
So, and then the follow-up to that is, how do you know that these stories are not fabricated disinformation, black ops programs?
Well, partly because, number one, I trust him implicitly. Partly, and that's probably not the great answer, but partly because what he's telling me is nothing, it wasn't U.S. military ordered missions type things, because he will not break his U.S. secrecy oath. So now that international security is no longer a viable organization because everybody's pretty much inactive or dead. He's only told me a few things that they've been involved with. So,
yeah, okay.
And like I said, a lot of it is being corroborated by stuff people are telling me.
All right, and we have this question here. Now, this goes back to last week's broadcast interview with Lieutenant Colonel, where he suggested that all of them basically are reptilians. But is it possible that you both could be right in that maybe they are reptilians, but some can shape-shift into other species?
I believe. Well, I don't believe that they're all reptilians. Just because I don't.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
My husband has told me about. I've got a list of like 6 or 7 species that he's reported on, and I'm not saying for sure that they're not, but I don't believe that they are. And you've got different species, like for example, if you live on a gaseous planet, your body might be more like a jellyfish, and that doesn't mean you've shape-shifted into a jellyfish-type creature. That just means that's how you exist. The ones underwater, they're not reptilians, and some of them are like jellyfish things. And when they come out of the water, they have to, I don't know, it's like put on a suit of armor so they can at least exist in our, environment of air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there are several species of reptilians out there, and I don't think they necessarily all look the same, but I don't think all aliens are reptilians.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so then we have this follow-up question as well. Could these all be reptiles that are in a disguise that are fighting against God's angels?
I really do not want to get into any religious discussion about this.
All right.
So I don't want to go there. I will say that from the information that had been given to my husband and then what he's passed along, and this, you can find this in other legends that so I'm not the only source. But there's a lot of people who have researched and understand that reptilians and Nordics, for example, were 2 species totally different from each other that, lived here on the earth long before humans. Mm-hmm. And pretty much things got wiped out, I think, with a big asteroid. The reptilians had, before that happened, sent colonizers out into space to colonize places in space and came back, millions of years later, and oh gosh, here we are. So.
Yeah. All right, we have this. Is the orgon effective against aliens?
The what?
The orgon. I think they call it orgon blaster or some sort of device.
I don't know what an orgon blaster is.
Okay.
I know that in both sides probably have, there's a microwave or a sonic type weapon that was used on my husband when he was a kid, and that was by MIBs. Some of them were alien, some of them were human. Mm-hmm. And then fighting against a certain kind of shapeshifter alien, which is called the Jotun, not a reptilian. They can really basically only be stopped or controlled by this encapsulating goo that, I don't know how to describe it without going and finding the description in my report, but it's the bullets don't stop him. So I'm sure there's weapons out there that stop certain things, and I don't know all the mechanics about all the weapons.
Let me ask you, on this spacecraft that we have that you sent that drawing there, that looks remarkably like